Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Griffiths, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to an exclusive live event on behalf of Q Associates and NetApp. At Q Associates, we work with organisations across the UK to provide independent advice and specialist services in relation to strategic IT environments. This requires us to develop deep technical capabilities and commercial relationships with many of the world's leading technology providers. And one of the organisations we've worked most closely with over recent years is NetApp. So I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Grant Caley, Chief Technologist at NetApp for the UK and Ireland. For the next 40 minutes or so, Grant will be presenting the very latest announcements and developments from NetApp and give us an insight into the company's future direction. The Q&A box is now open, so do please enter any questions you may have as we go, and we'll do our best to answer them after the presentation during the Q&A session. So thank you all for joining us, and I will now hand over to Grant.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. As Andy said, I'm Grant Caley, the Chief Technologist for NetApp in the UK and Ireland, and I'm going to provide you really with a strategic update, really, in terms of where NetApp's strategy is at the moment, and some of the recent announcements which we've had. We just had our Insight Digital event a couple of weeks ago, and we had a whole raft of announcements, so I'll cover off some of those as well and how they fit within our portfolio. But as Andy said, if there's any questions, please do put them in the Q&A, and those that don't get answered as we go through, we'll answer at the very end, so thank you. So I think the first thing that I see is that the situation that we've been in since March has really changed the kind of business priorities of the customers that I talk to. And that's been quite profound to some degree. And really what we've seen is that in the short term, businesses are much more focused on a few different areas. First is cost optimization. We're in a very uncertain cash flow scenario for most industries. Very few are not finding that. And businesses as well are looking at how they really enable remote work enablement because of the kind of scenario of most people. And I've been working from home for the last 6+ months, are really finding a changing position in terms of where their workforce needs to be to enable their business. And actually that also has meant that the customers that we're engaging with are also remote in a lot of cases as well. So businesses are trying to have to look at how they can engage their workforce remotely, and engage their customers remotely as well. And that has a big kind of impact in terms of where technology and where IT sits behind that. But a lot of the projects which were kind of sitting at the forefront before we went into lockdown are still sitting there and will still pass, but they're more sitting in the medium term now. So we've got ongoing projects that companies are looking at around about business resilience, around about digitizing the customer experience, and to some degree that's a lot more important than it was before, about getting products out digitally, innovating with new services. The whole landscape has really changed. And customers are also looking at how they change and build more of a digital supply chain and ecosystem and become more operationally digitized as well. There's a lot of modernization of legacy happening at the moment as companies realize that if they're going to really adapt their business to the changing circumstances they find themselves in, they have to adapt and change their IT operations. And actually the talent that sits behind an organization has to be able to adapt to that as well. So we're seeing a lot of those changes. So these are all really kind of sitting at the business level, I suppose, in terms of the priorities that I'm seeing from customers at the moment. If you look at it from an IT perspective, what we are really seeing is an absolute acceleration of digital transformation. That's about getting the business able to leverage more technologies, more better use of data to drive the interaction with their customers. And that is absolutely placed firmly on IT to help accelerate that. And what we tend to see within that is a lot of companies are looking at how they modernize their applications and infrastructure to meet that kind of demand, whether it's to enable them to go into new areas of business acquisition or just to enable more efficiencies at the end of the day, because legacy technologies often carry with them a cost burden in terms of that. And we do see the adoption of the cloud. There isn't a single business that isn't looking at the cloud, but the journey that sits to the cloud is really more of a hybrid journey that we tend to see, and I see with customers. Very few are cloud native in terms of the capability. There's too much either the compliance or regulation, or there's too much legacy, or there's just actually a cost profile which sits better often in the data center than it does natively in the cloud. But don't get me wrong, there are great opportunities for meshing and bringing the cloud to the data center. And we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of some of the technologies that NetApp can bring. Data is the driver in a lot of cases for digital transformation, in terms of not just engaging with your workforce, but also engaging with customers, and using that data to better customize and personalize the experience is 100% important. And that's meant that there's been a lot more focus from an IT perspective on analytical technologies, the use of those, visualization technologies, the use of AI in terms of improving the decision-making process, and actually automating a lot of the decision-making process as well. And RPA is one of the big buzzwords that we hear a lot as well. And in general, not just RPA in terms of across the business, but automation from an IT perspective is gaining a lot more traction. It just helps standardize, simplify, and enables you to scale at a better cost point the rollout of services. And actually interesting, the thing that the cloud has driven, and actually the situation we're currently sitting in, is there's a lot more interest in new IT procurement models as well. We've gone from the world of where we could buy CapEx purchases and know what we're going to do for the next 3 to 5 years. There's a lot more uncertainty, obviously, in that kind of view. And therefore, we see a lot more customers starting to think about consumption models and that type of approach to IT, so that it better matches the kind of short-term reaction that the business has to the direction that it's going. But it's definitely a very changing landscape in terms of where customers are today. And that's really what we tend to see. If you look at it at the kind of macro level, we see that really companies are looking for flexibility. That's the key to being able to adapt to what these new environments throw to us. But at the same time, the other flip side of that coin is knowing that the business is unpredictable, and therefore having to have, from an IT perspective, better control over the cost within the organization, better control over the risks of deploying IT. That is absolutely fundamental. And in order to help businesses kind of adapt and change, speed is becoming the new competitive advantage. How quickly can the business, and consequently IT, adapt and roll out new services? Because if you look at some companies, I read about, I think it was Primark, or Primani, as my partner calls it, but Primark, they have been a traditional retail business selling through shops to their customers, very successful at that. They've launched a website for the first time in their history, because they realized that the scenario that they're in meant that their business model had to change for their interaction with their customers. And it's that type of adaptability that needs to be delivered at speed to be able to capture the change in customer demand that the situation that we're in has really driven. So speed is absolutely the new competitive advantage that IT has to be able to deliver for the business to be able to take advantage of new business moments as they come along. And this really kind of sits to where NetApp's strategy is, I suppose. We're really focused on helping customers from a data perspective unlock the best of both cloud and enterprise IT. So we're not kind of mandating that customers should now be just 100% in the cloud or in the data centers. We do recognize that's a hybrid world across the top of that. So really NetApp are focused on, firstly, helping you modernize your data center, and importantly, cloud connect it, and we'll come back to that. But also, if you are going to go into the public cloud, one of the big inhibitors of making that a successful journey, apart from all the complexities and technicalities, which are obviously ones to overcome, is the cost of the cloud. It is an OpEx model. It is a model which you have to have better control and actually bring cost efficiencies into if you want to make that journey successful. So NetApp are absolutely focused on cloud enabling the data center, but also when you do go to the cloud, helping you get more cloud for less cost. And the overarching strategy of pulling this together in the hybrid world is what we call helping you build your data fabric. It's how do we bring simplicity and flexibility of the cloud, but into your data center, because ultimately you're probably going to have both models. But then when you do put into the cloud itself, how do we bring better optimization and actually bring the enterprise and all the capabilities that you develop in your data center, bring those into the public cloud arena itself, so that the public cloud becomes more secure, more protected, more compliant in terms of what you might want to do there as well, all wrapped around about the use and provision of data and the applications that you deploy to leverage that data. So when we actually talk about data, and it is all about the data, excuse the pun on the right-hand side, but that's where IT is focused. the key thing that data sits on before you begin to build applications and to leverage other services on top of that is the infrastructure. And in the data center, your data centers, your infrastructure has to deliver a set of attributes effectively. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to be reliable. It's designed to deliver performance. It's designed to be protected, secure, compliant, have availability, be leading edge where you can bring new technologies in, be simple as much as it can or automated. All of these attributes on the left-hand side are what infrastructure has to deliver. The challenge is that when you then start to look at deploying into the cloud, you're deploying across somebody else's infrastructure, and they may not bring everything which sits on the left-hand side from your data center into that cloud world. But as IT, as IT folk, we still have to ensure that we still deliver those same attributes wherever the data happens to sit. And that's one of the big challenges, is how to deliver this consistency of data management, if you like, across any form of infrastructure as a service, whether it's in the data center, private cloud, at the edge of the network, or into any of the multiple public clouds that you might be deploying into as well. So the first thing that NetApp are really focused on helping our customers with is really building this concept of the cloud-enabled or the cloud-connected data center. I think that's really important in today's world. The data center, actually, I did talk to one customer this year who build missile defense systems. They weren't interested in the public cloud at all, but that's a rare occurrence, to be honest. Most customers are absolutely focused on what they can deliver in the data center, but would very much like it to be cloud enabled in terms of being like the cloud and also connected to the cloud, because workloads are going to move in both directions. But when we look at the data center itself, NetApp are focused on really delivering a set of platforms that provide either SAN and NAS storage, which I know many of you have, AI stacks, conversion infrastructure, HCI stacks, object technologies, and third platform storage. And I'm going to dive a little bit into these and some of the kind of new capabilities and features that we've announced in the last couple of months that sit around these platforms. So I'm sure that's going to be of a lot of interest. The first platform that we have to offer customers is what we call the EF and the E series. It effectively is enterprise SAN storage designed to be very fast, very reliable, very dense, cost efficient enterprise disk. It's not as feature rich, if you like, as the ONTAP products, which I'll talk about, but it delivers a reliability and a performance which is the backbone of many vendors' solutions. It's actually, you can buy it as customers as a platform to deploy applications on top of, but equally we've got many customers who actually, many vendors who actually OEM the product. There's over 1 million deployments of E series and EF series out there in the world, and it really is a high performance dense platform that just delivers disk storage. That's what it's aimed to do. And some of the things that came out, it first of all is a SAN solution, so it's a block storage device. But what makes it interesting is it actually can be connected through a range of protocols. It can be fiber channel connected if that's what you want. You can iSCSI connect it. You can connect it over NVMe end-to-end for low latency connectivity on top of the fiber channel protocol. You can connect it just as a storage array using the SAS protocol. So you can use a SAS interface and plug it into the back of servers. And we see this more in HPC environments and grid environments, you can also use the InfiniBand protocol to connect into it. It's really your choice. It's block storage at the end of the day. You can choose how you wish to do that. The key thing that we launched with the new platforms is we launched an even more performant version of it, the EF series, so the flash version. And that delivers in a 2U footprint, so a really small footprint, 2 million IOPS of performance. So if you're looking for extreme performance for databases, for AI workloads, for other types of use cases, this is the fastest production storage platform that you could probably deploy out there. And what's interesting is it's not just about delivering 2 million IOPS in terms of performance, but it's also delivering it with extremely low latency, less than 250 microseconds. I mean, when I started in IT, you used to measure latency. As long as you could get less than 20 milliseconds for an application, you were doing well. Now we're talking about being able to deliver this platform with less than 250 microseconds of latency. So really designed for that kind of high end. But the other version of the E series is the E series with hybrid disk. So not using flash, although it can use flash for caching and acceleration of the spinning disk drives. But we just launched the 16 terabyte disk for this model. So you can put in a range of different hard disk drives, but being able to use a 16 terabyte disk means that you can literally get petabytes within a rack of this storage. So very dense, very efficient. And that type of hybrid disk storage is more used for things like archive platforms, for backup targets. So we have models that sit out there with, we've had with the backend storage for Veritas, for Commvault, for Veeam. It's really designed when you start to use these high density spinning disks for that to deliver that type of platform in terms of what you can do. But there have been also new innovations in this platform. We launched the EF300, which is a low-end but NVMe end-to-end platform. So it delivers that extreme low latency, which is characteristic of NVMe, but it delivers it, across a fiber channel infrastructure. So if you've got a fiber channel infrastructure already, NVMe works across the top of that, but delivers even lower latency by reducing some of the buffering and the bottlenecks that the fiber channel and operating system integration has. And actually, this platform is just going from strength to strength. This platform is the one we always release pretty much ahead of anything, the latest technologies which are coming in there. And actually, we just launched a 200 gigabit card for support in the back end of that, just really kind of showcasing where Ethernet and connectivity is going to. 200 gig is the next iteration that's just been released, and support for that has been released in the back end of the E series platform as well. So a great platform for what I call kind of third platform applications. Those are applications which do most of their data management themselves. They just want fast, reliable, dense, cost-effective SAN storage. That's where the E series and the EF series provides a lot of value for that. So, interestingly, the platform that leverages E-Series from our perspective, we use that disk ourselves, is StorageGrid. And StorageGrids, I'm seeing a lot more use cases for object technology this year than we have done in the last years. And object technology, if you don't know the difference, is really file storage stores files. Object technology stores files as well, but allows you to wrap metadata with that file. And that metadata that you store when you write the file enables you to do dynamic policy decisions based on whatever that metadata is. So if I was to write a document and tag it as classified, that classified tag would then automate a whole set of policies which may do things like ensuring the data is encrypted, it's kept in 10 different locations, it's backed up, it's replicated, and then also it might actually have a definition that says the data is deleted after 5 years, for example. You can do all sorts of things with dynamic policies wrapped around object technology. And StorageGrid is NetApp's software-defined object technology platform that's designed to deliver that type of capability. And the use cases that we tend to see for that type of requirement are quite varied. It's used as a backup repository, and most of the leading backup vendors will write to an S3 target. StorageGrid presents the S3 protocol. It's used as an archive platform. It's used a lot in the media industry for storing rich media. So we've got a German television company, for example, that have 26 petabytes of StorageGrid, and they use it to store all their imagery, all their video files, all the stuff which they collect on a daily basis and use for storing. It's that type of platform. Because you can classify and tag all the information you store, you've got much better management of it than you would with a traditional file system in terms of what it does. But we're actually starting to see, because of the fact that S3 has become a really popular protocol in the cloud, we're starting to see applications being written to use S3 as the storage protocol instead of file protocols on the back end. But interestingly, from a NetApp perspective, our ONTAP operating system, our all-flash FAS and FAS platforms, can also use the object platform as a cold tiering platform. So you might have high performance disk on your all-flash FAS. You could actually use a feature called Fabric Pool to cold tier the colder blocks from that platform to the StorageGrid platform and reduce the cost and free up capacity on the flash tier by leveraging StorageGrid for the colder tier. And that transparent automatic tiering can reduce anywhere up to about 80% of the cost of the primary platform and use the colder platform to leverage that. The interesting thing about StorageGrid is because it's a software-defined object repository, it can sit across any type of disk. It can sit on, and NetApp sell it as an appliance combined with the E-series with spinning disk and hard disk drives, so you can have high-performance object, high-capacity object. But it also works across third-party storage. You can deploy it on bare metal servers, on virtual servers, and use whatever storage they have. You can actually leverage tape drives as part of the global namespace that it can create, so that you can create tiering policies between active data, hot data, and longer term storage data. And actually it can also mesh cloud S3 storage into its kind of global namespace as well. And actually that's really important because it can use its own storage for, say, the hot workloads, but as data passes a certain type or meets a certain policy, it can be tiered out to an S3 service in the cloud, encrypted, of course, but obviously leveraging cloud technologies to help extend and Cloud Connect, the on-premise data center. What's been new in this platform is we've launched 16 terabyte disks. Obviously, they've come out in general, so they're sitting in the E-series, but they're now available in the StorageGrid platform as well. As I already mentioned, the platform has already the ability to tier to the cloud, to leverage cloud for colder storage, but also to mirror to the cloud so that you can maintain repositories both on-premise and across multiple public clouds. And it's also now, well, it always was for the last couple of releases of ONTAP, a target for Fabric Pool and cold tiering of data from ONTAP Flash to StorageGrid. But actually, we've just announced the fact that ONTAP can now tier from spinning disk drives to using Fabric Pool to object technology as well. So that provides support for that. And then in general, the platform itself had a whole load of new performance enhancements, so it's generally faster. They improved a lot of the security, which I won't go into the specific features, but obviously we can provide information of that. And they've improved some of the S3 API capabilities. It's actually, out of all the object platforms you can buy, it is the most compatible with the S3 protocol, which is obviously defined by AWS, but out there as a kind of general accessible protocol for people to use. And the StorageGrid platform meets pretty much all of the relevant API capabilities that you would need for object technology. Okay. So in our HCI space, NetApp have had an HCI platform for the last 3 or 4 years. It's been really popular in the UK. We actually sell more HCI in the UK than we do in the rest of EMEA. And really, the platform is aimed at providing a scalable, quality of service driven, simplified virtualization and container platform. It's that aggregation of compute, network, and storage into a box, node scalable, so that you can easily add more capacity as you require. And actually, the platform itself, what differentiates it, I suppose, is the fact that it does allow you to scale storage and compute separately from each other. So if you need more compute for applications, you can add compute nodes of whatever capacity, memory, cores, etc., GPU cards if you need them. If you want more storage, you can add just storage. And the storage that you add doesn't increase the license cost from a VMware perspective, which is one of the drawbacks of many other HCI platforms. But what we added recently was not just the ability to host virtualization hypervisors on top of the HCI platform, but also to host container OSs. OpenShift, for example, we're qualified on the platform. And that enables you to use the HCI platform as not just a virtualization private cloud, but also as a container private cloud, if that's what you're looking to build. And as I mentioned already, the compute and the storage are disaggregated, so you can scale each independently, and you don't increase the cost by just adding more storage from a licensing perspective. And we just announced a new low-end 2-node configuration. The original launch of this had a minimum 4 storage nodes to compute. Now we can actually just launch a 2 storage node. I think it's 1 compute you can have, but presumably you'd want 2 at least to be able to do load balancing of services and failover, etc. But that low-end platform is very much designed to put the HCI solution nearer to the kind of remote office where you might have deployments rather than just into the data center, and it enables that. And we actually just launched, not quite as relevant, but we launched a software-defined version of the storage layer that provides the storage for the HCI platform. Based on our SolidFire platform. That's really aimed at service providers and actually large banks and other organizations who like to build their own infrastructure across fully x86 platforms. What I mean by that is a lot of companies are looking at removing themselves from proprietary platforms. They just want to deploy hardware that is x86 compatible, so servers, standardized servers across the board, and then have everything they do run on top of that x86 platform. So have their storage be deployed on top of x86, their network, their compute, and therefore have a kind of a complete separation of hardware from the data management and the data and the services that you sit on top of that. So we just launched a software-defined version of our SolidFire platform as well, aimed at helping people build a software-defined storage layer across any x86 platform. And also we just deployed a new configuration that enables you to, with just a few clicks, deploy Rancher for container management on top of this platform as well. So if you're building a container HCI platform, you can literally just click and Rancher will be deployed across that. And Rancher helps you enable the deployment and management of containers and clusters and pods and all of that kind of integration of the different components that sit there. So that's really good as well. And actually that's just about to be announced publicly at KubeCon, which is next week. And also what's built into the platform is the ability to replicate from ONTAP to HCI, HCI to ONTAP, and also to the cloud versions of ONTAP, to build a replication compatible infrastructure that enables you to replicate data between all the different areas that you might want to move data between. So a very kind of capable, simplified platform designed to deliver HCI, which is simple to manage through the hypervisor, but deliver all these capabilities that we just mentioned. Our all-flash FAS and our hybrid disk version of that FAS platform, which all run the ONTAP operating system, has really been it's been our primary product for many years, delivering primary and secondary disk capability, SAN and NAS, for whatever workload that you're looking to deploy. And it's had a huge major update with ONTAP 9.8 that's just been released. And 9.8 has added quite a lot of things to this. I mean, we are now releasing we're releasing about one major release a year at the moment, I think, or we've gone from 6 months. We're now about a year in terms of those. But what 9.8 has brought to us is the first thing, which many people had actually asked for, is the ability of ONTAP to not just serve NAS protocols, NFS, SMB, not just SAM protocols, which you could look at fiber channelized SCSI, NVMe, but also to be able to serve object protocols as a front-end protocol. So now you can write object data directly to ONTAP with the metadata, and it will then store that for you. It's not designed to replace the StorageGrid platform. The StorageGrid platform is a dynamic policy-enabled object platform, that is node scalable across multiple locations, etc. Really, the point of enabling S3 on the front end of ONTAP is for kind of smaller use cases, but also to enable you potentially to reuse ONTAP boxes that you've got as fabric pool backends and tiers for your primary AFFs, for example. So it really opens up the kind of use cases that you can use ONTAP for by adding that S3 front-end protocol support. And as it mentions there, we now enable fabric pool to tier not just cold blocks from flash to S3, but also now to tier spinning disk blocks from spinning disk to S3. So you can use fabric pool, for example, on the back end of your DR platforms to reduce the kind of primary storage requirement for that and enable you to mesh S3 cloud-based or StorageGrid, for example, into that back-end fabric pool. We launched we've had FlexCache as a capability for many years. FlexCache is if you've got a primary controller that you write into using NFS, for example, if you want to accelerate that, and a good example of this is one of the big film producers, they do a lot of rendering to a NetApp box. And to access that, they want to have thousands of clients writing NFS to the same files to be able to render these files and create imagery from that. They use the capability called FlexCache, and what that does is it creates a virtual layer on other storage controllers where you can effectively offload some of the NFS processing to a kind of a cached tier of NetApp controllers, but the primary data set still comes back through to the central controller. So it enables you to really extend the performance, the read performance of a single workload by leveraging other controllers, software or physical ones, into that. And originally it was just NFS that was supported, but we've added SMB support, so Windows support into that. It's designed really for high performance workloads that type of scenario where you need to deliver absolute extreme scalable SMB performance and NFS as well, since it supports that into those boxes. So that feature was added in 9.8 as well. We've extended Flex Group capabilities. The way you deploy storage in a NetApp controller is you create a Flex vol, which is of a certain amount of size, and that has X amount of physical disk behind it. Those Flex vols were limited to 100 terabytes. Flex Groups enables you to mesh multiple Flex vols together and to create petabyte-wide single directories, effectively, or storage containers. That allows you to do large data sets, to aggregate performance across multiple nodes, for example, and to do a whole range of other capabilities. And we've just added a few features, fast delete, which as files, huge data sets rather, are deleted, that enables those to be deleted much more quickly. And they've also increased the snapshot count across that Flex group as well to 1,023. So you're able to take many of those instant recoverable snapshots and able to roll those back if you want to. We also added a SnapMirror business continuity feature to this release. SnapMirror, as you know, is the protocol that replicates data from one ONTAP box to another, actually HCI as well, because that supports SnapMirror. But what SnapMirror business continuity lets you do is it lets you create consistency groups around applications and have those snapshotted and replicated asynchronously or synchronously at the same time as a group to another controller, and then you're able to fail over that complete application, rather than the previous method would have been you'd had to fail over multiple relationships and then bring the application up. This creates a single continuity group, which allows you to fail over the application as a whole. So it really is more focused on applications and being able to replicate those and fail those across as a single entity. We have a capability in the cloud called Cloud Backup. We added the ability for that to be a destination for backups from on-premise storage controllers. So you can now back up ONTAP using the S3 protocol to the cloud backup service which NetApp have. So it enables you to use the cloud as a backup target and to do that with the capabilities that are built into the storage array without requiring additional services or applications on top. And they've also improve the storage efficiency of the product through better optimization around about the compression algorithms and getting into variable compression and other bits and pieces. And that overall improves the storage efficiencies that we can deliver by about 33%. So a big saving in itself. So 9.8 has a lot of capabilities. It went RC1, which is the first release, probably about 4 days ago. So expect that to be GA. I'd be a guessing man if I said Christmas time, but might be, might not be, but it'd be very soon anyway. So a lot of great features that are coming with this. And actually, kind of in lockstep of that, there's been a few new platforms announced. We announced a low-end all-flash FAS version called the A250. That's an NVMe end-to-end. So NVMe disk drives, NVMe over fabric connectivity, designed for extreme performance, low latency, at a lower form factor for applications that you want to SAN connect. Actually, it supports SAN and also IP protocols as well for the kind of NVMe connectivity. We updated the A700 to include new capabilities around NVMe as well. And we actually interestingly launched, and this one's quite interesting, the FAS 500F, which is a bit of a naming convention change for NetApp. But what the FAS 500F is, it's a hybrid storage device that uses QLC flash as opposed to spinning disk. And QLC flash is very dense, kind of from a cost perspective and a capacity perspective. Flash, it's not delivering the extreme performance you get with the SSDs that sit in the all-flash FAS, but it's delivering performance in between that and spinning disk, but at a much higher capacity. So we're now able to deliver dense, capacity-based SSD systems using this QLC SSDs to deliver for secondary storage uses, but using flash capability for this. And actually, I think if you look at what this product opens up the door to, it really shows you the future where disk drive technology is probably going. You know, ultimately, disk drives, I don't want to predict it, but I think we'll see secondary disk drives that are used for capacity at the moment be replaced by flash over time. Flash has a lot of advantage in the fact that it's electronic, there's no spinning parts, the power consumption is much less, the cooling's less. It just really has a lot of advantages. And this is NetApp's QLC version of, still with the ONTAP operating system and all the features, but delivering that capacity flash on-premise for secondary storage workloads. So really great to see that, actually. We've been waiting for that to come out this year. What's interesting is we also build across the top of these capabilities and aggregate our FlexPod capability. If you're not familiar with FlexPod, it's a converged infrastructure stack of NetApp storage, Cisco UCS and Cisco Nexus combined together, and then also with a set of blueprinted designs where Cisco and NetApp and VMware and Microsoft and others have worked on the exact configuration that you need to deploy for this. So we've looked at all the firmwares, all the integrations, given guides, CVDs as they call them, Cisco validated designs, to show you how to deploy a range of applications. And we've over 3,000 customers actually using this. One of the great things about it is it just takes all the engineering effort out of having to deploy that stack of compute, network and storage, because NetApp and Cisco and others have done all the hard work around about proving the technologies and letting you know what works with what. We've updated it. It's continually being updated, the FlexPod stack, but obviously it now has 9.8 support, obviously important. It has support for vSphere 7, which we just launched, OpenShift version 4, so that for a containerization platform. It also announced compatibility for the Cisco C125s, which I'm not 100% familiar with, but I think they're Blade servers, if somebody can correct me on that afterwards. Integration with Cisco Intersight, so that you can use that to manage across the stack. And also there's a Cisco UCS 480 with NVIDIA T4 and GPU configured stack for deep learning and AI applications as well. So if, or any other form of GPU required enablement, for example. So a lot of capabilities built in and a continuing expanding portfolio of what the FlexPod platform offers, which I think some of you might be interested in. What NetApp also deploys, we also deploy platforms not just for the data center, but to the edge of the network as well. We have our low-end flash platform with C190. We have our software-defined ONTAP, so you can deploy it on top of a hypervisor called ONTAP Select. And actually, we released a version of that that lets you deploy it into AWS Outpost, that kind of on-premise stack which AWS offer, so we can build data management into that platform. And we also offer it down as a very small containerized version, which we're working on building with server vendors into an edge deployment for retail stores, for that kind of pushing data management right to where it needs to be used at the edge of the network. This is all built on, you know, the capabilities that ONTAP brings. And these two platforms together are all designed to help you connect your data center to the cloud, to leverage the features of the cloud, even if you aren't primarily considering deploying into the cloud, but bringing that cloud capability, whether it be for tiering or for replication, for DR or backup, to the on-premise platform, and really kind of meshing your data center with your cloud options together to help you provide, you know, simplicity and efficiency and better protection, but also to give you one experience from a data management capability. Really important. And we do it natively in Azure, Google, and AWS, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, because ONTAP as an operating system is deliverable not just in the data center across AFF and FAS, but you can deploy it on top of our ACI platform as a virtual machine. You can deploy it on our low-end edge platforms, software-defined on top of a hypervisor, in a container platform, as I mentioned, for IoT. But you can also deploy ONTAP into AWS, Azure, and Google. And that is a really great option, because if you want to deploy data management and manage data in those clouds, you can deploy a version that looks exactly the same as the on-premise version. So these attributes down at the bottom are what the on-premise platform provides, for example. It does all the data management, encryption, storage efficiencies, backup, cloning, replication. You're well aware probably of most of those features in terms of what it offers. But the same capability we can deploy into AWS, Azure, and Google as a virtual storage controller called Cloud Volumes ONTAP. It looks like a NetApp controller. You use the same tools you do on-premise to manage it. So you use your system manager, your unified manager. It looks exactly the same. The difference is it's now stored in the cloud. And it brings all the features at the bottom to the cloud. So it brings enhanced data protection, encryption, security. But importantly, it also brings storage efficiency. So it helps you reduce the cost of your cloud storage by bringing the advanced storage efficiency features that we have on premise into AWS, into Azure and Google. And a lot of customers see an improvement of anywhere from 50 to 80% storage reduction in terms of what they have to pay the hyperscaler for cloud storage at the end of the day. It's also available in the cloud as a managed platform. So you can go to Azure's portal and say, I want 10 terabytes of NetApp NFS or SMB at this performance level with this protection, click, and it's delivered as a mount point for you to use for applications. That's a managed service, so it's managed by the hyperscaler, built through the hyperscaler portals, but it delivers a different way of delivering storage, which is zero management at the end of the day, as opposed to the Cloud Volumes ONTAP, which is a storage controller, which you still manage as a storage controller. But the difference between the two, really, if you're trying to choose which one to go, if you don't want to manage your storage, go with Cloud Volume Service and Azure NetApp Files. If you want extreme low latency, again, go with that, because it's actually NetApp flash controllers deployed in the cloud provider's environments. But if you want performance and cost reduction and still have all the data management that's at the bottom, then Cloud Volumes ONTAP, the self-managed storage controller, is really the option to choose for that. Across the top of this, we layer a set of services that help you optimize the cost, connect these environments together, integrate these capabilities into applications, provide data protection, and also help you tune your application performance and requirements to what you're looking to do. And we've talked about the on-premise platforms that NetApp can deliver. We can replicate and connect those to the cloud versions of what NetApp deliver, and we've talked about that already. To this, we've layered on a few services. One is global file cache. If you need to accelerate Windows users' access into cloud data or into remote data sets, then the global file cache product, which was the Talon acquisition we had, enables you to do that. You get low latency Windows file access into a data set, and you can also do collaborative locking, distributed locking around those data sets. So if you want 5 offices around the world to access the same data set, this not only accelerates access, but it provides distributed locking to ensure that you don't end up with corruption, which is really important when you're doing distributed and collaborative working. We added the ability to back up not just cloud data sets, but as I mentioned, your on-premise data on ONTAP. You can click ONTAP and have it back up into our cloud service, which uses S3 on the back end, and it manages that for you. We have tools called CloudSync to enable you to replicate data from file platforms, NFS, Unix, Object, to other file platforms or object platforms. It takes care of the replication and synchronization, so it's a great migration tool, but also for providing synchronization with on-premise and the cloud. It's really aimed for where SnapMirror isn't available as an endpoint on one of those platforms. It provides that bridge for everything across technology. We also launched Project Astra recently, which is about bringing NetApp's ONTAP data management into a Kubernetes stack and giving a portability for applications, whether they're on your own Kubernetes or any of the cloud providers' Kubernetes. It wraps migration of application capabilities and also backup and restore and data protection into the Kubernetes stack. So that's really exciting, and have a look at that if you're interested in more. As mentioned, we've always been able to back up SaaS applications. Office 365, we can granularly per user back up email, SharePoint, OneDrive, groups, Teams, anything you need to do at the user level to an S3 repository, and also enable granular recovery of that as well. And we launched recently a cloud compliance service. This service, when you launch it, looks into your cloud data and tells you if it's breaking any regulations and for compliance purposes. So it can look at GDPR regulations, HIPAA, PCI, there's hundreds of regulations and things that it can look at. And it looks into the data and detects when you're storing sensitive data with usernames in, or credit card numbers, whatever it happens to be, and it flags that up. And it looks not just at unstructured data, but it looks at S3 repositories, and also they've added cloud database repositories, NoSQL and structured databases as well. So anywhere you're storing data in the cloud, this product can help you show if you're breaking compliance inadvertently with that. Cloud Insights I'll talk about in a second. Cloud Manager, if you're not aware of it, is our tool to enable you to manage cloud data services and to bring in these other services as part of that. So it's a tool you launch, and it gives you a visual way of deploying cloud storage, connecting it to on-premise storage, and then launching some of these other services on top of that storage platform as well. If you do deploy compute in the cloud, we have the ability to help you optimize the instances you're buying from your cloud provider and reduce the cost by anywhere up to 80%. That's the Spot product, which NetApp bought the company about 6 months ago, and it really does help you take significant compute costs out of your cloud deployment. And it also meshes with storage as well to provide storage optimization across those compute services and help you reduce the cost by at least 50 to 80% in terms of what the cloud bill would be. And I'll talk about virtual desktops in a second. For those that don't know, Cloud Insights is our heterogeneous across multi-vendors, on-premise and cloud management product that lets you look at operations, so performance, monitoring, capacity, ticketing, alerting, financial costs on-premise compared to the cloud, different multiple clouds, and also management dashboarding and reporting. And the great thing about the tool is it works across, and this is just a sub-selection on the bottom right there of all the vendors that it works with. It works across every on-premise vendor, the storage layer, the fabric layer, the compute layer, the virtualization layer, the container layer, and the cloud resources that you have. It gives you a single picture across all of these. And it's actually free for NetApp customers to use the basic edition, as you can see at the bottom left there. And if you want to enable other vendors or other capabilities, you can just do it on a subscription basis. You can just enable it for a subset of what you do and look at an application-centric view of infrastructure, cloud and on-premise, or you could look at it across a wider estate. Really capable product, but having that free access for NetApp customers, well worth having a look at because it offers a great set of capabilities that you could leverage. And the NetApp Virtual Desktop Services is aimed at helping you easily manage virtual desktops, ever so much more important for remote working nowadays. It will help you deploy, optimize, secure, and power on and off virtual desktops across a range of services. It helps you across NetApp's HCI platform. It helps you across Microsoft's virtual desktop platform and also Google and AWS platforms as well. So it gives you a single control plane to simplify the provisioning, the management, the cost efficiency, the security of virtual desktops across all of these environments. And you can buy it as a point service, or you can actually buy it as a managed service where we also bundle in Office 365 protection, Azure NetApp Files or Cloud Volume Service as a storage layer for users to be able to store profiles and data as well. So there's different ways of doing this, because without this type of product, the complexity of deploying virtual desktops gets very hard. And Windows Virtual Desktop is a PowerShell nightmare if you've actually tried to do that yourself. This just removes all of that complexity and offers that capability through a SaaS service. So that's really the kind of pulling together, I suppose, of what NetApp have got from a strategy perspective. You know, we are offering a range of infrastructure options you can deploy your data onto, whether it's in your data center, software defined, or in any one of the public clouds. We have a range of infrastructure that helps you standardize and normalize all the data management capabilities that can be delivered across all of those environments. And then we offer a range of data services to help you protect, secure, be compliant, reduce the cost, integrate and connect these environments together. And then finally, it's really about helping you deliver data management into either your own data center, into your VMware private clouds, into Google, AWS, or Azure, or into VMware deployments in those public clouds, so that you can create this standardized data management layer across all of this, reducing the complexity whilst enhancing the kind of enterprise capability. That's really what, when we talk about helping you build your data fabric, that's where we're really focused on helping you. We are helping you unlock the best of cloud and enterprise IT. Quick mention for Insight, which happened in October. It was an online digital event. You can go to insight.netapp.com. All these sessions are available for customers for free, so you can go deep dive on any of the things that I've talked about to get more information. So please have a look at that if you haven't been when it first launched. It's there for another 2 months in terms of accessibility, and well worth having a look. There's a huge range of things to get a look at there. But at that point, I think we bring it to the Q&A, Andy.
Wonderful, thank you, Grant. That was really great, and obviously there are a huge number of aspects and areas now that NetApp are making very significant strides in the industry. So thank you very much for that. I can see that we've received a number of questions while you've been speaking. So if I can kick off with the first one. Hi, Grant. What data center trend do you see being most prevalent now and as we move forward?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think the data center trend that apart from going to the cloud, you know, everybody accepts there's a bit of a cloud journey going on for some customers, varies by customer. I think the other trend we're seeing is actually the simplification of IT within the data center. I'm seeing a lot more HCI conversations around about, we can't afford, if we're going to adopt the cloud and do other things, digital transformation, we need to simplify how we deploy infrastructure in the data center. So I'm seeing a lot more focus on HCI, being able to simplify compute, network, and storage, deploy it, have it very easily scalable to meet requirements from an application capacity or performance perspective, but also with NetApp anyway, Cloud Connect, that platform as well. So yeah, I think the biggest trend I'm seeing is a desire to modernize and simplify data center infrastructure. I think people don't have the time and the skills to spend on a lot of the traditional horizontal tiers as much as they would have done, and that therefore pushes things towards this kind of simplified model. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And there's some more specific to technology related questions coming through now. Are the HCI node configurations set, or can you customize things like RAM or the network ports?
Yeah, no, that's a good option. The options can be configured. You can choose high memory models, low memory, which is obviously useful for databases. You often want a low core count, high memory, so that you can get best database utilization. But you can completely configure that, so you can choose which models you want. And we actually got, when the product originally launched, there were kind of small, medium, large configurations. We've now opened that up completely, and there's a whole range of options you can choose, including adding GPU cards and other capabilities to that. And I think the same, although I'll have to double check, goes for the front end as well. So if you want to choose different connectivity options into that, you can do that as well. So yes, good question.
Great, thank you. So next question, can you use fabric ports to tier data within a single hybrid system, e.g. from a flash tier to an object tier?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So fabric pool, could you do that? That's one of those questions for the engineers. I don't see a technical reason why you couldn't, although they might not have thought of that as a use case. If you were going to mesh in one system, flash and spinning disk, then we have that capability already with a technological flash pool, which accelerates but keeps colder blocks on. It accelerates meshing HDD and flash together to give that combination of capability. But could you do it with fabric pools? Technically, I think you could. Probably one of those things you'd have to ask us to get engineering to double check whether they've thought of that use case. Most people were assuming it would be, I've got a flash system.
We can certainly come back. We can check that one out and come back afterwards. So thank you for that question too. I have a question on backup to Cloud S3. Can you use Snap Center as your backup software and keep some snapshots on your local FAS, but also offsite them to S3 in the cloud?
That's one of the use cases, I think, for cloud backup, is to offsite the snapshots. Is that integrated into Snap Center yet? Given we just launched the feature as a thing, I don't know. I'll have to come back to you on that one. So okay, let me find that out, and we'll go back to you on that. Yeah,
great. And I have a question. Can we listen back to this presentation? It's very interesting. However, there's a lot of it. Yes, I can tell you that we're recording the event, and it will be available on the Q website and also through our YouTube channel, which will communicate with you afterwards to all attendees. So yeah, you're welcome to watch it back as many times as you like. I have a couple of other questions as well. So more strategic questions. So is the public cloud where we will all end up in a few years?
I think the short answer is no. I think AWS, Azure, and Google would like that to be the case, and Oracle as well. Everybody's pushing towards that. But the reality that I see is that there are inhibitors around about legacy, cost, and compliance, which mean that will never be the case. I think some people will. Don't get me wrong. If I was building a business today, I'd look at doing it cloud native, at least until the cost got out of control. But I think the reality for pretty much all customers is that we'll have a hybrid model. We'll leverage the cloud for services of agility and and tiering, and maybe for disaster recovery, and potentially for some primary applications, particularly web-facing front end. But I think there's still going to be a reality where a lot of our services will sit in our data center. That varies based on your strategy, but I can't see that changing, to be honest. So hybrid cloud's the future. Absolutely, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for those questions. I mean, I hope we've been able to answer them for you. Clearly, there are some that we can take offline afterwards, and we will be in touch with you regarding those more detailed answers. And thanks again to Grant for such a comprehensive insight into NetApp and the direction today and the relevance in the industry. We've covered a huge amount of material during this event, and we've only had time to scratch the surface in many areas. So if you do have any further questions or would like to discuss any aspect of your IT strategy in more detail, we would love to help. So do please reach out to your main Q Associates contact or email us via the address on the screen there. That's netapp@qassociates.co.uk, and we'd be happy to help in any way that we can. So it really just remains for me to thank you all for joining us today. I do hope you found the event valuable. Thanks again to Grant, thanks to all our attendees, and goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.